I am in the people business. And if you will authentically develop happiness and gratefulness and transfer that to your employees, your team, and create an office atmosphere filled with joy and gratefulness, your business will increase. The place I take my car to get fixed, and I could increase that business by 50% if I could have a chance to coach those guys into an attitude toward people. You're dealing with people. You'll increase your business profits, I promise you, by creating a workplace that is happy.
Worry does not make you money. Happiness does. Because what Mike said about the people business is what I talk about all the time. It's worth it to you because if you're happier, you will make more money. You'll have better relationships and all that. Send them the podcast. Let them listen to Jeff and Mike for 10 minutes, and we will make an impact.
Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Ramona. Business with a servant's heart. Listen to the podcast. Ramona. We're all about to talk on life. Our guest will share his life story. We want you to success in life. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk on life. We're gonna talk on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are gonna witness.
Shout out to my sponsors, A Mind for All Seasons. Your brain is your greatest competitive edge, so why not optimize it? Just text optimize to 72000, 72000 for instant access to 6 quick videos that help you think faster, remember more, and stay focused longer. A big thanks to Epic App, the 4-step storytelling system I use every day to connect and to convert. Try it free. Email me at stever1961@gmail.com. That's stevr1961@gmail.com, and I'll get you the free app. Doing Business with a Servant's Heart was just named top 6 in small business marketing. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. We're coming in with part 2, or a sequel, or whatever you want to call it. I'm excited to bring these two gentlemen on. They've become friends of mine, walking the journey of faith with me, and so many other things. But let's start with our grateful quote for the day. We're going to start the podcast, every podcast with this. You make an amazing difference in more ways than you know. Think about that. You don't even know you're making a difference, and you are. So let's continue that forward. With that being said, we're going to talk about faith and 2026. And not 2026 scripture, not 2026, 2,000 years ago, the year. How can we grow in our faith, grow in our business, and grow in our lives with faith in this year? So let's bring our guests on. Mike and Jeff, welcome to the show again.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be with you.
Great to be on the show with you, Steve, and with all of our listeners. And I'm really looking forward to talking about faith today. And I think it's just a great way to kick the year off.
Well, let's start with that, Jeff. What do you think people should do to start the momentum of faith in 2026?
You know, faith it's a posture, it's an attitude, it's a lens through which we look at the world. And some people look at the world as though look at the universe as though it's malevolent, right? And then others look at it as though it's benevolent. Some people look around and they see scarcity everywhere, and then others look around and they see opportunity. So it can be a lens, it can be a way of looking, a way of approaching the world. I think, you know, for me anyway, when I think of faith and how one can increase it or grow it or maybe shift one's paradigm. I think it's Paul who says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And I don't think that's just like reading a scripture or reading the Bible. I think all of us have moments where our Creator speaks something to us, and it causes this, you know, when I think of God saying, "Let there be light," and light responds, or "Let there be plants," and plants, everything jumps forth with joyful obedience and response to God. And I think it's the same for us, right? Faith is that God speaks something and then I reach out in response to it. This is Abraham. I mean, this is every character of faith and of belief. It's always a word that's given, and then faith happens. Faith is that thing that happens when God speaks into our life. And so, starting out a new year, for me anyway, I'm always listening. I try to, remove the debris, the clutter out of my ears, the pathways, and just open myself up to hear, what God is speaking to me, what God is saying. And for me, and everybody, it can be different, but for me, it usually is like I hear something and it hits my heart, it resonates, and I'm like, yes. And it can be a step of direction. It can be a word of encouragement. It can be a word of affirmation. But I hear it and I'm like, yes. And I don't rush on. I let that seed germinate within me. I confess it. I proclaim it. And then I find ways to live it out that week, that month, that. And so I think for starting out 2026, for me, it's always a listening posture. It's like hearing because that's always going to increase my faith.
Love that. How about you, Mike?
Steve, I'm a convert. I got born again from my cynicism a few years ago about a new year. I still hear people say, someone said to me recently, Mike, it's December 31st and then it's January 1st. It's not that big a deal. It's just more of the same. So that's exactly how I used to feel, a bit cynical. And then of all things, and I'm a child of the 60s and was raised with groups, of course, when the Beatles came out and all that. So there was a group called the Byrds that had a big hit called To Everything, Turn, 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 There Is a Season. And of course, that song is written about from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And here's what struck me. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says, To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Now, that's what changed my mind, Steve, because you've heard of the time capsule thing where we gather some artifacts from this year and we pour it into the concrete of a cornerstone, and 100 years from now, someone discovers that and laughs at our various contraptions that we had back in the old days. The time to every purpose means to me, Steve, that for you and me and Jeff and all of our listeners today, there are things set now in their purpose to be released in 26 that couldn't have been released in 25. Because you don't just have a purpose, but there's a time to every purpose. So we move forward and it's like a rose opening. And there's a lot of lessons in that, in a rose opening. I remember a Sunday school teacher when I was a kid teaching us an object lesson I'll never forget, by taking a rose bud and then a rose fully opened and matured, beautiful, and then handing us a rosebud and asking us to open it and make it look like that one that was on full display. And of course, what we did is made a mess of tearing the bud up because you can't force it open. And so I couldn't force 2026's blessings for me into 25 and prematurely open them. But now I have the earnest and beautiful expectation of all that is set to open for me this year that couldn't happen last year. So I'm full of hope.
I love how you said that. It's simple, easy. Talk about resolutions real quick, because I think the quote you told me before the show was very apropos.
Yeah, someone told me the other day, or I read that a New Year's resolution is a 2-week commitment to try to change. so, of course, we know that all of the gyms selling memberships, this is their biggest month. Right after December's excess, suddenly we want to get back in shape and be able to tighten our belt. So we try. But the ugly truth is, most of those gyms selling memberships make their money on inactive people on auto draft that came 2 or 3 times or a week or two and then never came back. and the membership goes on. And I've been there before, and you feel so guilty for not going in. You just go ahead and pay the membership. And I found that it hasn't worked well for me to get me back in shape, just to let them suck money out of my account every month. And I don't go to the gym. Somehow that doesn't work. So there is a different way and a better way. For instance, in the church world, Steve, which Jeff and I are affiliated with, um, lots of churches go on a fast in January, 21-day fast, and they model it after Daniel in the book of Daniel, a 21-day. And scientists say 21 days is the number of days it takes to change, break, or start a new habit. So it kind of fits all of that. I know lots of people on a 21-day fast of some kind or another, fasting something for 3 weeks in January. I'm not opposed to that. I've done that. But I have a better suggestion. What has worked better for me, Steve, is what I call a fasted life. The great apostle Paul said, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not good for me. And anything in excess can become a sin. So in other words, food is not a sin, but I can make it unhealthy for me by being so addicted to it. I'm out of shape, I'm out of weight, I'm overweight, my heart is struggling, and I can't quit. So I think there's great power in developing the personal discipline to live a fasted lifestyle. In other words, I live by the philosophy that especially on questionable things like alcohol, too much alcohol is always a bad thing. So I live a fasted life with alcohol. I'm not a teetotaler, and I'm going to have an occasional glass of wine, but I know if the snake bites me and I go into an area of excess, then I'm in trouble. I can do that with anything: food, sex, need for approval, anything. So I encourage people, and of course, Jeff and I, based on our latest book with the Real Happy, we're the happy teaching guys. And that's one of the things that I've learned is I wasn't born, and I have to say even raised like a super happy guy. I had a precious German mom who's in heaven now, but she was a disciplinarian. She was sweet, but she was tough. And I had deadlines and benchmarks, and you got to get this done by then. And there wasn't a lot of, my mom wasn't a hugger. She wasn't a, I love you, Mike, every day. I knew she loved me, and I don't have any hangups about any of that. But for me, I did become really performance based. If I was doing everything I should be doing, right time, right way, then I was probably okay. If I wasn't okay. And the problem is, Steve, we take that into all of our relationships. If I have dad issues, then I have God issues because we can't help it. We put them in the same place. Not that dad is supposed to be God, but our Heavenly Father, we take much from what we know of him based on how our Father treated us, our earthly Father. And there's so much father brokenness and hurt that it translates right over into brokenness and hurt toward God. There's been a new term invented in the last few years called church hurt. And a lot of people have that. A lot of people went to church to get help and they got screwed up there because you can get more feelings sometimes of judgment and of disapproval than you do of an unbelievable, loving Father who actually is happy with us and wants us happy. And that's the paradigm shift that I experienced because first half of my life, I wasn't in relationship with a God that I thought was happy with me. I thought he was about half ticked off and I wasn't doing that well. And I was sure he was pointing a long, bony finger of judgment at me. And somehow I was trying to struggle enough to be good enough to deserve his goodness. And when that shifted, it changed my life. And that's what I'm advocating. It's taken me too long to get it said, Steve, but I'm advocating that this new year can really be a new experience, but happiness is an inside job, and we're going to have to look inward.
Powerful. My family and me own, well, I didn't own, but I was part of my family's health club from 78 to 2000. So exactly what you're saying. We had to, we had to shut down Christmas because we had to clean it up because we knew we were going to be busy. We tried to keep it. We actually called people. We did the service part. That's why we were busy. We didn't charge people, but I know other clubs, I won't say names, that made lots of money for people not showing up, but we're not going to go there. I fast every Monday. I've been doing it since May. Lost 45 pounds and off all my diabetes drugs and my cholesterol drugs. So thank you for saying the fast, because church, you need to be fastest too.
Yeah.
If you've got to work and make money, you're going to church every day, 7 days a week, and you're not doing your job to make some money. I mean, that's what's so cool about what you said. Everything can be good, but everything also could turn bad too, the yin and yang.
Yeah.
I love you guys so much. But here's the question. I got asked a couple times this month. Steve, how do I step in faith in 2026? I'm on the fence.
Steve, could you give us maybe a little bit more, like put that question in a couple of different ways? Are we talking like when we talk about faith and I'm on the fence? Are we talking about belief in God? Are we talking about just having a positive disposition towards life? How are you framing that?
I think belief in God, because they've come to Christmas Eve or they've been exposed, because December is a big month for church, like January for health clubs. December is, we have a big Christmas Eve, New Year's and all that. But they've come to me, like a couple that I brought to church for Christmas Eve said, what's my next step? And of course, the church is helping them, and it's good churches will do that. But somebody listening that is on that fence, what's their first or a couple steps they take that 2026 points them towards, or why they should go to faith?
Yeah, I can jump in here first, and then I don't know that Mike and I have talked much about this particular, the way you're framing this question. So I'm looking forward to how he would approach it. But I think I think as humans, at least in the West, the business of the kingdom of darkness is to get us going so busy that we don't have time to slow down and recognize the goodness of God that is all around us. And so we're in that, proverbial rat race, right? We're just going, we're on the hamster wheel. We're just going, 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 going. And we're not awakened. We're not aware. We're not, our eyes aren't opened to God's activity that is happening in every breath, in every moment, moment by moment, minute by minute. And so I would say to somebody that says, I'm on the fence, my faith, I'm not sure. I would say just slow down. Just slow down and stop and look around at what is happening in your life. So this morning I woke up and I was reading Luke chapter 17. I was reading the story of the 10 lepers. There's this story of Jesus. He's on his way to Jerusalem, and there are 10 lepers, and so in that society, you'd have to stand afar off. You would wear certain clothing. You would yell out loud, unclean, unclean, and everybody had to stay away from you because it was a contagious disease. So there are these 10 lepers, and they're crying out, unclean, unclean, and then they notice it's Jesus, and they say, would you heal us? And Jesus just speaks a word, and he says, go show yourself to the priests, because that's how they would get be certified that they had been cleansed. Was the priest would be the one that would indicate that. So they're all walking away, right? And as they're walking, the way that Luke says it is, as they are walking, they notice that the healing has happened. As they're walking, it doesn't happen when Jesus says it, but somewhere between that word and them heading off to go see a priest in a city somewhere, they notice they're healed. And then it says, and one of them turns around and runs back to say thank you. So let's take this story of somebody that's on the fence. And we all recognize something good that's happened in our life, a little miracle, a healing, something positive that's happened, a job raise, or whatever it is. But most of us just keep on going our merry little way and we get on with life. Well, man, that's great. Go on to see the kids, go on to get back and get my work back in gear, go on to all that. And then there's one that slows it way down and says, hold on, something has just happened here, a miracle. God has been involved in this moment. I need to stop and turn around and go say thank you. And he does, right? He turns around, goes back, says thank you. The language is beautiful. It says, with a loud voice, he cried out, thank you. He falls on his knees. And as he's thanking Jesus, Jesus says to him, he says, why is there only one? Where are the other nine? And then he says, your faith has saved you. Sozo. It's the word we get for salvation. It's the word we get for whatever happens to the other nine, we don't know. But something happened to this one because he slows down, turns around, and acknowledges the miracle that's happened in his life. And I would say to people that are on the fence, if you slow down, stop, turn around, and just start saying thank you for the little miracles, the little healings, the little goodness. Salvation is something that happens to us. Faith is something that happens to us. And it happens in a moment when we slow down and we just say thank you and we acknowledge the goodness of God that is all around us.
Stand on that pedestal and shout to the rooftops. Because the problem with the world is, Jeff and Mike, we're hearing all the negative. My wife turned on the news this morning and all this happened. It's all negative news or negative shout outs. And not that people are thanking people for that, but that's what their awareness is. Oh my God, this happened. But by the way, their daughter just got married. That's probably too much, but I got a raise, like you said, Jeff. Mike, what's your thoughts? And Jeff, I love that because we need to slow down. What do you think, Mike?
Well, with the news situation you just mentioned, Steve, because of technology, and this is all developed. I mean, I'm old enough to have been around when it wasn't like it is now. When I was a kid growing up, if you had a television, it went off after the evening news. It didn't go 24 hours a day. Sometimes I remember when Channel 8 here in Dallas started all night movies on Friday night that went till midnight. So now we have the ability to pipe the world's troubles, disasters, and heartaches into our bedroom of all things, or living room, 24/7. And no one is designed to overcome that. I would have a challenge for our listeners today, Steve. I was thinking as Jeff spoke that there's a scripture in the book of Malachi where God, he's talking about giving, and he actually uses a challenge and says, try this and see if it works. Prove me now in this, that if you do it, that I'll open windows of heaven over you. I would challenge our listeners today to say this. Instead of either evening or first thing in the morning, I like first thing in the morning, go to bed, turn off the news, all that. But the challenge is this: take 5 minutes, get quiet, be in a quiet place, no media on, and you can call it prayer, whatever you will. I call it prayer, but make a list of things that you're thankful for. Is the wife that's there with you in the hospital, or is she healthy? She's healthy. Thank him. Are your kids good? Do you have an automobile? Does it have gas in it? You have a job to go to. You live in a house with a roof over your head. Take 5 minutes to be thankful. And then if you want to, after a week, go back to just dumping every negative input you can into your mind for 5 minutes, and all the troubles that you got at work and everything waiting on you that you hated yesterday is still there today. Just try that. And any sensible person is going to balance that one against the other and say, gosh, I have slipped into some really bad habits here. I'm going to take some designated time. And it's so powerful, Steve, it doesn't have to be hours. Now, the great thing is if you learn how to do kind of a meditation, meditation in the old days, in scripture days, it means, when you break down the word, it means to mutter to oneself. So all through the day, instead of cussing the traffic, how about muttering some good things to yourself about how thankful you are for all the good that's going on in your life? And it will literally change your life. In fact, Jeff and I have learned, and the research shows it, but it also makes common sense. It's not possible, Steve, to be happy, and everyone pursues that. But it's not possible to be happy and worried at the same time. You can't do it. That's one of the things Jesus covered on the Sermon on the Mount, is he said, the first half of that sermon is the 8 Beatitudes. The second half of that sermon is and I'm going to use an aggressive word, he attacks worry and says, why are you worried? Then he gets real practical and says, if you're short and you want to be tall, which of you can add 1 inch to your size by worrying? Then he calls out the flowers and says, look at all these poppies blooming around here. They look more glorious than Solomon when he was the king, but no one dressed them. They didn't get beautiful and sway in the breeze because they worry. They're just being what they're created to be. Stop worrying. And here's the thing, Steve. The opposite of happiness, and when we learned this, it changed my life. The opposite of happiness is not unhappiness. The opposite of happiness is worry. So you can't worry and be happy at the same time. It's not possible. They're mutually exclusive. So I would encourage people to take 5 minutes and test this, whether it works. Take 5 minutes to be quiet, close your eyes, be reflective, and just go through a list of things you're thankful for. There is always something to be thankful for. My wife, Kathy, had a terrible accident a few months ago, fell and broke her leg. She had serious surgery. Her blood loss with a compound fracture caused a stroke. We were in ICU, and I could have found all kinds of things to be filled with fear of the unknown. And instead, I was sitting up there one day, and I chose the path I'm encouraging us to take now. And I said, thank God that I'm in a city with a hospital, the best doctors and the best nurses, and they're taking the best care of Kathy. I could be somewhere on the other side of the world in a jungle and no hospital for 100 miles, and she might have died. But I'm here and she's being taken good care of. Always something to be thankful for, Steve.
I'm loving this. One of my guests, Jen Drummond, an audience, write this down. She does a family grateful stoplight. When she comes, she has 7 kids. So she's got a single mom, 7 kids, incredible woman, but they'll stop at a stoplight and any kids are in the car. Joey, I don't know her kids' names. Joey, what are you grateful for? Mick, what are you grateful for? And then shout out their gratefulness. So audience, that's a great tip, taking what you just said, Mike, and expounding upon it to your family. And we go on and on. We're running out of time here. We're actually over, but I want to be over with you guys. Let's end with this question because I think we have to wrap it up. It is somewhat a business podcast, but ROI is the big thing. Now, Tim Tebow calls ROI return on impact. That's what we want to do. But let's use that ROI, not the return on investment. Somebody takes faith, they grow in their faith. What does the end of 2026 look like? What is that impact they've made for themselves?
I'm going to give Mike the last word, so I'll jump in here. I don't know, but Steve, I think there is this serendipity, this thing we're not anticipating when we step out in faith. So, for example, let's say I'm believing and my faith is reaching out there that I'm going to grow my business by 10%, 15% this year, right? And we get to the end of the year and let's say we hit 10%, we hit 15%. And so that was kind of the ROI, right? That we invested our faith. And so this ROI was this, the thing that we had longed for or reached for or had this goal for. It happens, so we can celebrate that. I think the serendipity is that is as for me, when those moments happen and I get the return, the physical return, or whatever, I think the big ROI is the awareness that there was this God creator, this one outside of myself that collaborated, that worked with me, that was engaged with me. And I feel in those moments, the big ROI for me is I am walking with God. God's at work with me in this. And it wasn't the thing that I had put down the goal, but all of a sudden I have this epiphany. I could have never done this just on my own. God was at work doing this through me, with me, in me, beside me. And in that moment, there's this rush of joy, this excitement. I get to the end of the year and and I look back, and I think that's the power of what we're talking about here with gratitude. I look back and I'm like, I wasn't alone. Even when I walked through Death's Valley, even when I went through difficult, I wasn't alone. There was one that was with me, and that's the joy. Mike and I talk about in Real Happy that happy are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And it's that idea that as I was walking through something, the joy of that valley that I walked through was there was a presence beside me comforting me that had I not walked through that valley, I never would have experienced that presence. That presence was there. I was aware of it, most vulnerable to that presence in the difficulty. And that's the joy, that there was this comfort that was with me. And so I think, and going from year to year, I carry that with me into the next year, right? That there is this presence. And so then my faith increases, and my faith increases for more. And so it's just always this idea of the miracle always meets the faith. The miracle meets the faith. And faith is always, it involves a step. It's not just mental assent, but it's Peter stepping out of the boat to walk on water. It always involves a step, a movement. I refer to it as there's this audacity. It requires a God imagination and then an audacity to step out into something that you never would have done on your own. That's faith. And then the encounter of the miracle meets you at that moment where you step out, this big, audacious, bold step, reaching towards God. And then the big return, the big ROI for me is oh my God, God just met me here. And that for me is the big takeaway.
Mike, good luck to come after that, but I'm going to
Oh, he will. Trust me. He can.
No,
and he will.
Here's what I'm going to do, Steve. I'm going to give our listeners a 20-second way to increase their business this year 20%. That's the goal. Okay. You got to realize, number one, I'm not in the computer business, the car fixing business, the house building business. I am in the people business. And if you will authentically develop happiness and gratefulness and transfer that to your employees, your team, and create an office atmosphere filled with joy and gratefulness, your business will increase. The place I take my car to get fixed, they're good mechanics, and all of them are rude, in a hurry, and I could increase that business by 50% if I could have a chance to coach those guys into an attitude toward people. You're not just fixing cars, you're dealing with people. You'll increase your business profits, I promise you, by creating a workplace that is happy.
I'm going to borrow your phrase, Mike. Worry does not make you money. Happiness does.
That's
love
right.
what you just said. That's so cool. Well, guys, again, overtime, well appreciated, because I've learned so much. The stories you've told, I didn't know the bird song was that. I'm going to go look it up after we get done. I'm fired up right now. My joy is, happiness is rising, because we get to learn, and that's the power of learning, is to learn stuff like that. Mike and Jeff, how can people reach out to you and connect with you?
Steve, they can go to I'mRealHappy.com. The Happy Book and all of that is there, or MikeHayes.org. And we actually have a mini course on happiness that we're offering right now for your listeners at 50% off, just because, and I mean this sincerely, Steve, we do a lot of podcasts. We really like you. I love your spirit. I love your attitude. I love your curiosity. You have a, when we lose our curiosity, we become boring and uninteresting. You're still curious for life, and you're learning and you're growing and digging. And I love that. So any way we can serve you, please let us know. We want to be back again. Sorry we went over time.
It's well deserved. So I'm going to do things back to you, because you guys have impacted my life even today. And the first time we met, and that's why I love podcasting and meeting people. What a great way to meet people, by talking. Like anytime you have coffee, most of the time, it's usually a happy conversation. Hey, catching up. Hey, what's up? Maybe it's a business. But I'm going to do a couple of things. Audience, the first 3 people that sign up for their program at 50% off, I'm going to send you a book called Real Happy. And guess what? These guys wrote it. So they'll reach out to me, but you got to mention the podcast or my name so they know. And then they'll send me your contact information, and I'll send that book out. And then anybody doesn't sign, if you don't do the course, you just reach out to Jeff or Mike and mention the podcast. Those 3 people will get a book as well. Because what Mike said about the people business is what I talk about all the time. I'm growing so fast in my faith and my business because working with people like you, treating people like you right. And that mechanic story is so wonderful, because the world is, I'm just going to keep going there. I know them and they don't pay attention. So I'm going to add to this. Being a parishioner or a customer, happiness has to be on your side as well. Don't go to that gym because it's cheap, but they treat you like crap. Don't go to the mechanic. Don't go. Go to where people make you happy.
Absolutely.
Be a good customer. See how what you guys have done to me? It's just blowing up into me. So again,
Steve, you're good. We're going to turn you into a preacher before you know it.
I think that's what my ministry is, this podcast. But again, audience, 3 people that sign up for their course. And if you miss it, sign up for the course, darn it. It's worth it to you, because if you're happier, you will make more money. You'll have better relationships and all that. We won't get into that. And with that being said, sign up or subscribe to podcasts. And it could be my podcast. I'd love for you to subscribe. But anyone that you're listening to, and here's the power of a podcast. Would you just listen to Jeff and Mike today, and you share that with somebody at a birthday party, a business event, and they're talking to you about they're not happy what they're doing. They're just not happy, or they're asking about faith. Send them the podcast. Let them listen to Jeff and Mike for 10 minutes, and we will make an impact. And what do you call that? The gift of life. And you're giving that out every day. So go ahead and do that. Me and Mike, Jeff, and I want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast. And we'll see everybody in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, guys.